il passare su, 3-4. Cosa ha fatto con Leodola? Non la fa, deve Barres, va su, passare. Tiano, forte, tiano, tiri, anche via, dai. Cosa fosse qua? Voglio plessi. In 3, teste labi, 3, what you play in 1, tette, andante. You don't know the Italian still andante, what means? Un tette, un tramp. Oh, per Dio santissimo, questo è impossibile a credere. Possible to believe that you can be so stupid. You can believe, no! Corpo d'un Dio santissimo. Madonna santissima. Ah, basta, I can go. Basta. I can go. Degli anni simili non li ho mai
With me at the microphone is one of the greatest stars of recent decades at the Metropolitan Opera, the great soprano Elisabeth Rethberg, of whom I have very, very fond memories indeed. She was many things to us in New York during her long career. She was, among others, a vocal model. She was looked up to by singers and singing teachers all over the world as a person who sung with the most beautiful technique. And then she was a very, very touching actress. She was, in fact, an extraordinarily versatile artist. She sang French, German, Italian roles. She was a wonderful Mozart singer. She sang Wagner, of course. She was famous for her Wagner roles, for her Verdi. But, Madame Rethberg, tell us, please, something about your memories of Arturo Toscanini.
It was overwhelming for me. How could I say?
It's certain...
Scaring a little bit.
A little scary?
Yeah,
and
a little scaring, and yet uplifting.
At the same time?
Yeah, at the same time.
It's a wonderful combination.
Yes.
He didn't
Yes.
scare you so much that you didn't sing...
No, but he... How should I express it?
Well, it may be inexpressible in words.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Madame Rethberg, wouldn't you tell us at least one of your favorite memories of Toscanini?
Certainly, with pleasure. The real climax of my happy work with Toscanini came when he undertook again the directorship of La Scala in Milan. Maestro wanted me to sing Aida on the opening night. To my misfortune, I did contract a cold upon arrival in Milano and was unable to appear in the general rehearsal. Toscanini came shortly after it to my hotel to see me personally. He hardly could hold back his discontent. I explained that I had to visit the doctor to be sure to sing the premiere 2 days later. I even had offered to sing a few phrases to show my vocal condition, after which his advice was not to open my mouth until the performance.
And then how did the performance go when it came?
Before stepping down to play the overture, he had asked me, "How are you?" A bit nervous, I said. To which he added, "Cara mia, let me tell you that I am nervous before every performance, for the orchestra, for the singers, and for myself. This bit of nervousness is probably necessary to do one's best. He's right. After return of Vincitor, I hardly had reached my dressing room to rest a bit and change the costume for the second act when an assistant of Toscanini hurriedly appeared saying, "Maestro wants you immediately on the stage to sing the voice of the priestess."
What did you do when he wanted you to sing such a tiny part as that?
Oh, I was astonished, but did not want to upset Toscanini. At the end of the performance, Toscanini did congratulate me upon my debut at La Scala and added in Italian, "You are an exceptional Aida, but more than that, you are a real champion of art." I want only to add that Toscanini's magic touch of music will live forever in my memory.
And so will our memories of you singing with Toscanini, Madame Rethberg. They're very wonderful memories. And now sitting beside Madame Rethberg here at the microphone is her husband, George Cehanovsky, another leading member of the Metropolitan, who is retiring at the end of this season after 40 years with our opera house here. He is also one of the most versatile members of the company, but Mr. Cehanovsky, won't you tell us something about your memories of Toscanini?
With my pleasure, Mr. Downs. During one of the performances of La Bohème at the Met, I asked my good colleague, Bas Moscona, how went the rehearsal of La Bohème with Maestro Toscanini, who was about to conduct this opera over the NBC network. He replied, "We still do not have a Chanard. Do you think I should apply for this job?" Moscona suggested that I called Walter Toscanini by all means.
Oh, what was the result?
I did not lose much time, and the very next day I was invited by Walter Toscanini to assist a piano ensemble under Maestro himself at 3:15 p.m. the day after. It goes without saying that I was punctually at 3 o'clock waiting outside of Maestro Toscanini's studio door. At 3:10, I became a bit nervous, not hearing a sound through the soundproof door. Then at 3:13, I somewhat meekly pushed my head through and to my amazement realized that I was only 4 bars before my actual singing entrance of Chanard. There was no time to hang my coat and hat, and I rushed with the first phrases of Chanard, being somewhat short of breath.
That was a scary beginning.
It was. Maestro Toscanini didn't say a word and went on. Then Chanard is supposed to scream certain words to his companion, at which my unprepared breath gave up entirely, and I just murmured these words in half voice. Then all of a sudden, Maestro screamed at the top of his voice, "No, no, can't you understand gridato means?" I said, "Yes, Maestro, it means screaming. So why don't you scream? Take a deep breath and scream. Repeat after me. Sei sordo, sei ripo, quest'uomo chi è?" At the top of your voice. I repeated these 4 words with all I had. Then Maestro, in absolutely calm voice, said, "Put your coat and hat somewhere and start all over again."
Oh.
Finally, at the first break, Maestro spoke to me. "Can you come tomorrow for a rehearsal? I think you will be able to do Chanard with me." I said, "Maestro, I cannot find the words of appreciation." To which he replied, the words, that's what I want from all of you. You have good voices and are musically prepared to sing your roles, but many of you do not have the right articulation. The opera is in danger to fall back 50 or 70 years. Please pay attention to all your words, because the musical meaning of phrases will come so much easier to you.
Oh, I remember he was a fanatic about that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cehanovsky.
Well, thank you, Mr. Downs.
And with us here this afternoon is Rose Bampton, one of the great artists of the Metropolitan, and an artist who sang very often with Maestro Toscanini. And I think you sang the Ninth Symphony and Fidelio and Walküre, all kinds of the top masterpieces with him, didn't
Yes.
you? Would you tell us something about your experiences, Miss Bampton?
I would enjoy telling you about the first time that I sang for Maestro Toscanini. He was having a rehearsal in the afternoon at 5 o'clock, I was told, for the Verdi Requiem. And about 4:15, the phone rang, and it was the manager telling me that I should have been there at 4 o'clock instead of at 5 o'clock. I was just petrified.
And this was your first rehearsal?
It was the first time I'd ever sung for Maestro Toscanini, because he had heard me on the radio, but I'd never met him in person.
You never met him at all?
No, never had met him. So I hurried down to the Astor Hotel and went up to his apartment, and the artists were all there, and there was a silence when I came in, and I was white and shaking. And Maestro, seeing my agitation, asked me to sit down, and he finished something that one of the artists was singing, and then asked me to sing the first solo in the Verdi Requiem. And I, in my worst Italian, the best that I could offer at that moment, explained that the rehearsal had been 5 and it was not my mistake. So he stopped me from talking and said, just to sing. I sang so miserably. My voice quavered. I was petrified with fear. And when I finished, Maestro looked at me with very sad eyes, and he said, "Cara, I'm sure you can sing better than that." And you know, that was his attitude with me, was always kindly and helpful all the years that I sang with him.
What a remarkable and tender and insightful thing to have said.
Very endearing.
It's a beautiful experience. Thank you very much, Miss Bampton.
Thank you.
Two of the most glamorous figures that have sung with Arturo Toscanini, and two of the greatest artists who have also sung very often here at the Metropolitan together, are Robert Merrill, the baritone, and Richard Tucker, the great tenor. I'd like to just start right out by hearing from you gentlemen your first encounters with the maestro, which I understand are somewhat intimidating occasionally.
Sure were.
Mr. Merrill?
Well, I'll never forget mine. I walked in, and there was the maestro sitting at the piano, alone with the score of Traviata. And I stood there for a while, and he looked up, and for 3 long minutes, which felt like a lifetime, kept staring at me with those penetrating, dark eyes of his, looking right at me. After the 3 minutes, he looked up, and he said to me, "Are you a father?"
And you were 19?
No, I was 25, but I looked 19, you see. And I realized that he thought I was a much older person. I could see this running through his brain. Why, what a mistake I made. What did I do? At any rate, he said, "Are you a father?" And I said, I used to stutter, by the way, as a kid. I haven't stuttered in 20 years, but I said, no, maestro, I'm not even married. And there was another pause for another minute. Looked at me, sort of fondling his little mustache. It was a characteristic of his.
Yeah.
And he said, let's try. And he played the entire score of Germont, every note, including the entire duet, and sang the soprano part of the duet. And I went through this and sang the entire part with the maestro. And there was one G flat that it isn't written, but it's traditional. And coming to this note, I didn't know how to change. You see, it's an E flat that's written. I didn't know whether to take the E flat or not. I've never sung the E flat. I've always sung the G flat. So I sang the G flat, went through the part.
And you think tenors are prima donnas?
Tenors transpose.
Oh, well, that's different.
At any rate, another minute passed, and looked up, again fondling his mustache and looking straight at me with those eyes, and said, "Well, I will try to make you a father." One rehearsal I remember very clearly. There's a syncopation in the duet with Violetta, where I sing "Siate, siate la," and it was difficult for me then to sing it right, correctly, exact rhythm. And the maestro was very sweet. We'd come to that part. He was standing next to me, and he'd pat me on the head with his baton on the downbeats.
What a hit for a downbeat.
And you know, this is very strange. Every time I sing the part, when I come to that phrase, I feel the pressure of the baton on my head, and I've never sung it wrong since.
What a marvelous teacher.
wonderful?
Mr. Tucker, what were your early encounters? Could you remember those?
Yes, of course. Well, my association with the maestro was in Aida, which was the first telecast.
Yes.
And after he had auditioned me, all he said was 2 words, bella voce, and left. And the next morning, now I felt how one feels with auditioning.
Translate beautiful voice, I should say, for our audience.
And I recalled the outset. This is what made him great. When I started to sing Celeste Aida, he stopped me with his piano playing.
Yeah.
And he said, looked at me and he said, Tucker, do you love a woman? Naturally, I was embarrassed, you know, with the cast in the room, the small little room. And I said to him, Maestro, of course, I'm married. I have a son. We had a child, one child at that time. He said, well, then sing like you really love her. Don't sing like other tenors, you know,
yes,
because everybody was looking for that bombastic B flat,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
He wanted dolcissimo.
I wanted to ask you about that. You did sing that B flat, good and loud, and then you dropped your voice down an octave to the low B flat, repeating the phrase vicino al sol, which is not written in the score. Did Toscanini want you to do that?
Well, to sum it up, Ed, I will say this. I was very, very much surprised that it has never been written into the original score. And after all, Maestro Toscanini, knowing Giuseppe Verdi, never took the trouble or had somebody write it in.
I think maybe we should stop at this moment to explain to the audience that the very last note of Celeste Aida
Un
is
trono
written
vicino
in
al
the-
sol.
Un trono vicino al sol, next to the sky, is written in a very
Pianissimo.
soft pianissimo and dwindling away like to almost a thread in the...
There is
in
no
the-
tenor in my lifetime that I have heard sing this pianissimo.
I've never heard it either. and-
I've heard it sung in falsetto, but not
Yes.
pianissimo, because it's
Yes.
very difficult to make that diminuendo.
Yes.
But anyway, when he asked me to do it, naturally, my first remark was, Maestro, I'm putting my career on the line, so to speak. He says, don't worry, I will give you a photostat copy of the letter, which I have in my possession, you see.
You mean a letter from Verdi? And so you sang it that way?
I sang it, and of course, I don't have to tell you the calls, telegrams, and telephone calls from my old dear friend. You remember Spadoni, rest his soul, the choral director at that time of the Metropolitan, calling me from California and saying to me, Richard, what happened? Couldn't you hold the B flat?
Isn't
Which
that
I knew
terrible?
which was going to happen.
And everybody
I said,
expects
Maestro, I said to him, believe me, this was a wish of Maestro Toscanini, and he showed me the letter and filled me in with the story, what happened.
Yes.
The tenor that night wanted to cancel the performance of Aida. And there was nobody around, and Giuseppe Verdi came in there pleading with the tenor, and he said, please sing. You don't have to hold the B flat. Just hit it and make your portamento come down come down to the B flat below, and I will have the orchestra play a little more forte instead of the pianissimo diminuendo with the cello. And this is what happened. But I think the most pleasant memory that I have kept through the years, and it was a relationship like father and son.
Yeah.
So that's the way I felt with him.
Thank you very much, Robert Merrill and Richard Tucker, for being with us. And now sitting with us here at the microphone is the great soprano Alicia Albanese, former Metropolitan Opera soprano, whom we all remember especially for her Butterfly and her Traviata and Bohème. And the two latter she actually recorded under Toscanini, and they're particularly beautiful things. Tell us something, Madame Albanese, about your experiences with Toscanini.
I don't want to talk about Maestro. He's a great conductor, or he's a great musician. All the world knows that.
Yes.
I want to talk about him like a human person, his personality. And when I went to see him in his home, he was always criticized himself to say the tempo was not good and this and that. And then I said, Maestro, it's not right. You did really a great performance. And he said, no, I'll let you know now. Listen, sit down and hear the records, and then hear this, the way we should do. And he was at the piano playing and doing this. The things really moved me to see this great, great maestro to criticize himself.
He was enormously modest.
Really.
And
was
as you obviously...
He made me cry, believe me.
Yes. Well, what a moving experience, Miss Albanese, and how illuminating. It really shows that he was even more critical of himself than he was of anybody else. Thank you, Miss Albanese.